Welcome to the Best of Beaver County, presented by St. Barnabas, a weekly segment dedicated to putting the focus on the amazing things and the amazing people behind them in Beaver County. The Best of Beaver County is sponsored by and content is provided by St. Barnabas. The show airs every Thursday from 11 to 11:30 on WBVP, WMBA, 99.3 FM, and Facebook Live. Now, with no further ado, let's welcome host Mike Romigh to introduce today's program.
Good morning, Happy New Year, and welcome to the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. I'm Mike Romigh. Since 1900 and counting, St. Barnabas has been caring for people in southwest Pennsylvania. Today in Allegheny, Beaver, and Butler counties, we offer a full continuum of care for our residents, patients, and the community. The St. Barnabas Health System has developed into a visionary leader in the healthcare industry through compassionate and quality care, offering an array of unparalleled healthcare services from skilled nursing to extensive memory care activities and programs. Additionally, the medical center has world-class doctors and dentistry teams where patients can receive a full range of services under one roof that also include rehabilitation, hospice care, palliative care, home health, and home care. Building upon its heritage, St. Barnabas continues to reach out to those in need and lives out its mission through individual and institutional services, which help the health, social needs, and increase the quality of life for others. Men and women are invited to join in the work of continuing Christian caring, healing, and teaching, and along with St. Barnabas, bear witness to its founder's reminder, God is able. We hope you had a most joyous Christmas and New Year holiday. With a fresh New Year ahead of us, we've asked our returning guest today to talk with us about nutrition. Given that we have probably gained a few pounds over these past few days, we will ask our guest to try and answer the question, are you really what you eat? Please join me in welcoming back Jeff Bost, neurosurgical certified physician assistant. Jeff, Happy New Year and welcome back to the show.
Happy New Year to you, Mike, and it's great to be here. It's great to make it another year in this world, and hopefully our listeners are doing well and had a joyous holiday.
Mm-hmm. And the temperatures are really doing us a favor in this early part of January, reaching the 60s. And even though we've had some rain, at least it seems like we're off to a good start. New Year's always comes around with resolutions. People who feel they failed at some point last year are always geared up for the new year and saying, I'm going to do this better this year. I'm going to stay on the diet. I'm going to get on the exercise program. I'm going to be a better person. Well, let's take the time to talk a little bit about nutrition and in terms of understanding why we are what we eat and what are some of the better habits we should follow to increase our quality of life and brain health.
Well, Mike, everybody thinks about resolutions on New Year's. It's a part of our history. It goes way back into ancient times. People thought about, making things new in the new year. And we actually were very fortunate on our show, Living Well, which airs on your radio station at 8:30 on Saturday mornings. We talked about resolutions. And it's important to think about our health because, that's really why we do a lot of our resolutions. We think about weight. We think about exercising more. We think about being kind to people. And our diet is part of all of that. So when I think about a resolution for weight, I ask people, why do you eat? What is the reasons for your eating? And obviously there's some self-evident answers like you're hungry. Maybe you eat to maintain your healthy weight. You tend to lean toward diets perhaps and go with certain higher protein, carbohydrates, or starch diets. You consider nutrition as far as what the food you eat. Then some people think about their snacks. Are they snacking too much during the holidays or even normally? Are they loading their plate up with lots and lots of food that they really don't need and become very full after they're done eating? And what about desserts and carbohydrates and all the sweets that we tend to eat? And maybe we don't eat the fruits and vegetables that we really should. So all these questions come into mind when we think about what we do with our diet and how important it is with our health. Especially as the new year comes up, we know that through the holidays, people typically gain 3 to 5 pounds during this time of year, and most of us don't lose it during the rest of the year. So that can really add up to a lifetime and leads to the epidemic we're seeing in obesity. So diet and health are really integrated.
Wow. Jeff, that's a lot to consider. So what are the answers, and how will the changes benefit us?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things I tell a lot of people, and it's well researched, is that we really can't swallow the ocean when we think about changes. We're creatures of habits, and we don't want to. We resist change often, and we've been eating dessert after our meal for 40 years, and I'm not going to change that. But what can happen is every year, as I said, you're gaining more and more weight, and maybe that dessert that you could burn off easily in your 20s and 30s now is sticking around and adding pounds to you. So what I tell people generally is to start small, and develop a habit. Habits really are the best way to carry out any resolution or anything that you're going to move forward with, and that is making it something you do daily, something that triggers you to do it, whether it's an alarm or a little note on your calendar. But start off small is what I recommend. You gain the weight generally slowly, and you can take it off generally slowly. No more than typically about a pound a month is probably one of the best ways to lose weight. But what I tell people is to really look at their carbohydrates. Carbohydrates have exploded in our diet, processed foods as well. I think I've told your listeners and you in the past that when we were cavemen, if you will, we only ate about a teaspoon or so of sugar a year. Now we're eating up to 150 pounds. An average American eats about 150 pounds of sugar. It's almost unimaginable amount of sugar that we're eating. So just even cutting out small things like dessert or that piece of candy, or they can be very helpful for us to develop a habit of maybe avoiding desserts or maybe avoiding carbohydrates. The other thing that we don't do, and which is a real problem, I think it just came out of research on hydration, how important hydration is. And the big thing with hydration is that it affects every organ system in the body, including the brain. So if you become dehydrated, aren't drinking enough water, that can certainly affect your brain. But the big thing that they're recommending is to drink water before and during meals, before to expand your stomach and make you not quite as hungry, and then during meals rather than soft drinks or other sugary drinks that can add calories. So those are some of the things that I'd recommend people to start off small. But in general, everything you do on the plus side is going to be beneficial to you. The whole thing you don't want to do is backslide and eat more desserts and so on. So if you can just hold your course, that's even better than doing nothing.
Yeah, you were talking about putting a little Post-it note somewhere in the house, or a reminder with a clock or something like that for a more healthy life, to remind you to exercise or do something that's healthy for you. Is guilt a good thing? Because some people, they start a walking program, and in a couple of days they say, well, I can take today off because I've done it for 3 days this week already. I'll get back to it tomorrow. And then you feel guilty about it, and when you feel guilty, you eat.
Well, exactly right. And guilt is a emotion of punishment. So a guilt is a negative feeling, and you want to make these things positive. How much better you'll feel when you're able to have your belt not so tight, or you were able to go down a dress size or something like that. The idea of thinking of this as a goal rather than a guilt. So we want to reverse the philosophy or psychology of it and say, these are the things I want to get out of it. Excuse me. The benefits that I can receive with doing these positive things to my health.
Okay. And as far as the benefits are concerned, and you mentioned the rewards, and it just seems as though that when we finish a meal, we can hydrate ourselves with plenty of water, but the reward is always some form of carbohydrate, because carbohydrates are so good.
That's right. Give them a piece of candy.
Yeah.
After they get an A on their test, or it's inbred into our society because it's a treat, and we want to treat ourselves. And there's actually a physiologic reason for that, is that sugars or carbohydrates actually stimulate neurotransmitters in our brain called dopamine. And dopamine is the pleasure neurotransmitter. It actually causes pleasure in the brain, and the brain is stimulated in a pleasurable way. And so the brain is hardwired to consume calories, especially high-calorie foods like sugars. So it's a feedback loop that has evolved in humans and almost all animals to make them want to eat, basically. We were often starving, and we didn't have a refrigerator in every cave, so we had to continue to find food. And so when we found it, it was a great pleasure to eat, and our brain actually stimulated us to want to eat. Mm-hmm. So these are things that are very common, and a lot of things we do are part of our human nature, meaning we want to put on calories. We want to store that fat because we won't be able to find food in the next week or 2 weeks or so. But now we have unlimited food. There's McDonald's on every corner, a Dunkin' Donuts that gives you as many donuts as you want. So we have unlimited food, and yet our human evolutionary desire is to eat, and store fat. So it's really a complicated thing when you think about it as far as how we can resist those carbohydrates, but it really takes us to think about it, and now this time of year is a good time to do that. Our
evolutionary brain, I wish I understood that better, because nowadays, and I remember from growing up that my grandmother would say, we better eat that before it goes bad and we have to throw it out. Now my wife says after Christmas, you better eat some of those Christmas cookies or we're going to have to give them to the birds. It's not like we're not going to have them again, right?
Right. Well, we always, the bounty, we want to make sure we use the bounty that we've gotten rather than throwing anything away. And I think it's proportion, size, and so on is very important. But there's a lot of psychology that has a negative psychology of how you had to clear your plate, and the idea that, you know, even if you're full, you've got to clear that plate, and that plays against our ability to lose weight. So instead of going to Costco's or Sam's or the big stores and buying tons of food at a time, perhaps buying smaller portions and so on. It's not easy. I'm not saying that it's easy to do, but it's something that we have to work on as far as portion size as well.
For most of us, it's been a battle of a lifetime. Jeff Bost is neurosurgical certified physician assistant. He is talking with us this morning about New Year's resolutions and get back on the right track health-wise. And he said most of us have gained like 3 to 5 pounds over the holidays, and you should be satisfied if you could take off a pound a month and start to get back to your fighting weight. We've got more to talk about and more expertise from our guest, Jeff Bost, on the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network.
It's been stated before that working at St. Barnabas is compassionate work with excellent career opportunities. In addition, we've heard when you enjoy what you're doing every day, it's not work. But don't take my word for it. Let's listen in to what motivates their employees.
Hello, my name is Emily Tahansky, and I love to be able to help others and knowing that I make a difference in a person's life.
Find out about the exceptional career opportunities St. Barnabas has to offer by visiting stbarnabashealthsystem.com/careers for more information, or by calling 724-444-JOBS. That's 724-444-5627. Find out why St. Barnabas is apart from the ordinary.
Here we are back to the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. Our guest is Jeff Bost, neurosurgical certified physician assistant, and we're talking about getting you back on the healthy train after the holidays are over with. No excuses. The temperature hasn't dropped below 0 yet this week. We haven't had any snow, so there's no reason you can't get out and enjoy some fresh air and get healthier. Stick to your New Year's resolution. Jeff, in the first segment, we spoke about the physical benefits of a nutritionally balanced diet. But that balanced diet also has an effect on our brain, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Every organ in our system is related to our diet in the sense that that's what feeds every cell in our body, including our organs, and it gives us the building blocks, the amino acids, the carbohydrates, the fatty acids that we need to build new cells. And so everything organ-wise is just as important for our nutrition. And whether it's the heart or whether it's the liver or the brain, every organ has to have the adequate nutrition, minerals, and vitamins to survive. And the brain is especially important because, without our brain, we're really not anybody. And so as a neuroscientist and been in neurosurgery for now almost 35 years, I can tell you that the brain and the spinal system and the peripheral nerves are one of the most important things in our human body. So the nutrition that we give to those organs and the cells within those organs are very important.
Mm-hmm. So it's not really hunger pangs, or those hunger pangs come from our brain, and this all emanates from what we're thinking, how we're thinking, and how our brain reacts to the different things we put in our bodies.
Well, in part, that is true. Our visual responses, our smell, our taste, all stimulate our appetite or not. But one of the biggest things is chemicals and within our blood system that stimulate receptors in the brain. Primarily, one of the major stimulants is sugar or carbohydrates. So our brain is an organ that takes almost 20% of our blood supply. The metabolism of the brain is the greatest of any organ in the body, and so it needs the blood to bring the nutrients, and in the form of carbohydrates is one of the ways that our brain cells make energy. So whenever the sugar levels go down in our body, our brain says we're hungry. And so there's a feedback loop there that is very important in our diet that we didn't discuss in the first half, is the fact that when we eat so many carbohydrates, we get that bouncing effect. When this carbohydrates go very high, then another hormone in our body called insulin gets dumped into our bloodstream to allow cells to absorb that sugar. Mm-hmm. But the problem is when you eat so much sugar, too much insulin gets dumped in the body and it pulls all the sugar out of our blood supply. So what happens when the brain doesn't sense any sugar in our blood? It immediately says we're hungry. So you've heard that commercial, Mike, I'm sure. You can't eat one potato chip. Well, the reason for that is a potato chip is basically starch, which is basically a form of sugar. And so as soon as we eat something that is a high sugar, our blood sugar goes up and then it drops down immediately, and we're hungry again. So this is that yo-yo effect that a lot of people get into, this cycle of eating, is the fact that our brain is sensing low blood sugar because the amount of insulin dumped into our blood from those carbohydrate spikes.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting biofeedback pathway that is difficult to resist.
Yeah, and it sounds as though it's especially difficult and perhaps even dangerous with those carbohydrates and insulin spikes and those sort of things for people who may be genetically predisposed to diabetes.
Well, it's probably one of the greatest causes in our other organ systems. For example, the pancreas that has to keep on pumping out that great amount of insulin is probably one of the most commonly thought of reasons for type 2 diabetes. And the fact that that's epidemic in our society is the inflammation and stress associated with having those pancreatic cells work so much and then develop a condition called insulin resistance, where the cells have just been bombarded with sugar and insulin over the years, and they just don't respond as well. So the blood sugar shoots up, and then all the complications associated with that, including peripheral neuropathy, kidney disease, blindness, and so on. So it is all related. And it goes back to eating these, what we call processed foods, or sugars that are simple sugars rather than other sugars or other things that we eat that take a much longer time to digest.
Yeah.
So there's a scale called the glycemic index, which measures how fast the sugar or carbohydrate gets absorbed by the body. So something like a sugar cube will immediately absorb almost in the tongue and shoot our blood sugar up, whereas something with fiber and fruits and vegetables are much slower to absorb and don't shoot that blood sugar up so quickly.
Maybe I could blame that on Dr. Salk, because when I was a child, I had to get this sugar cube with the polio vaccine on it. And so maybe that's how we got connected with sugar, huh?
Well, I don't know. I think it's been a long time coming that we've had an addiction to sugar, and it's not easy, but it's all about choices, Mike. When we think about, eating that candy bar versus having an apple or something like that, those are really the choices that we make every day, 3 or 4 or 5, 10 times a day. What do we reach for? And we don't always think about the damage it may or may not be causing. we need nutrition. We need carbohydrates. We need fatty acids. We need proteins. But the point is we just don't need them, some of them in excess, especially carbohydrates and processed foods.
Yeah. You've mentioned many times about hydration, staying hydrated. And I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm not a tea drinker. I do get caffeine from diet beverages that I drink. I have also noticed, though, if I'm out to dinner or eating, if I order water instead of diet cola or something like that, I don't tend to drink as much of it. What is it that they put in these? Because when people think of hydration, they don't always think of water. They think of something else that is pleasurable to their taste buds.
Well, I think when you mentioned something that I just want to latch on to quickly is the fact that you said you eat or drink diet drinks.
Yes.
So they have artificial sweeteners. It's interesting, and this is an observation that's been going on for several years. Diet drinks have been around for a number of years, and yet simultaneously there's been a continued explosion of type 2 diabetes. So is the artificial sweetener actually protecting us or not giving us any harm relative to this greater influx of diabetes that we're all having still? And what they found is actually the sweeteners alter our probiotics or our microbiome in our colon. So those are those bacteria that live in our colon that help us digest. And when you drink diet sweeteners, it actually can alter the microbiome, and it actually may be one of the reasons that we've not seen a significant drop in type 2 diabetes with the onset of artificial sweeteners, is the fact that it alters our microbiome and still leaves us susceptible to type 2 diabetes. So even though we think, oh, well, I'm not getting the carbohydrates when I drink the diet sweetener, there may be problems in the fact that it's altering your microbiome.
Wow.
But as to why you want to get hydrated, I say, drink the water, drink it before you eat, actually, to try to expand your stomach. Drink it during your meals and after the meals, and perhaps you won't need that extra cookie or dessert afterwards.
All right. Jeff Bost is our guest, neurosurgical certified physician assistant. You've given us a lot of information, Jeff, about the benefits of being good physically and nutritionally, a balanced diet. What is the best method or approach to accomplishing the goals that we've set up?
Well, Mike, you've heard it before. Many people talk about it. We want to emulate a diet that has been researched many years now. It's called the Mediterranean diet. And basically, it's not exclusive to the Mediterranean. You or I can start that diet tomorrow. But the idea of avoiding saturated fats like meats, red meats that have a lot of fat on them, sausages, things like that have a lot of fats infused into them, processed foods, processed meats. That's one of the things we want to avoid. We want to just start eating high-fiber foods. Trying to avoid just eating potatoes, the number one vegetable that Americans eat, in the form of French fries. We want to switch to good fats, which are the avocados and the olive oils, which are monounsaturated rather than saturated fats, such as Crisco and other corn oils. We want to reduce our food portions. The Mediterranean diet has a small amount of carbohydrates and more protein and more healthy fat. So the idea of our proportioning how much of each of those food groups we have. And then salt is everywhere, Mike. It's really a killer. It's one of the major causes for the explosion of high blood pressure that we're seeing in our society. Processed foods are riddled with it. We know that the manufacturers of food know we like salt, we like sugar, and they pump that into those processed foods. So try to avoid them. And as we talked about earlier, try to avoid the high carbohydrate foods as best you can.
So what you seem to be saying is that, they make a concerted effort to try and hook us on these things.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. There's testing groups. You've heard of them, I'm sure. What tastes best to you? The fatty, salty, sugary foods. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, very good. You found it interesting that you touched briefly on malnutrition. Talk about the obvious side effects to brain health that malnutrition presents.
Well, one of the things that we don't do, and you and I know this, is we don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. And when I say malnutrition, it's the malnutrition of essential vitamins and minerals. We don't get the micro minerals in vitamins that we need for brain health or any other organ health. We certainly lack in the antioxidants like the vitamin C vitamins that are very important as antioxidants for our brain health and other organs. Vitamin C is a category of what are called antioxidants. Every time our cell makes energy, it produces oxidants, or basically a waste product from that metabolism. So if you don't have enough antioxidants through your diet or through the metabolism of your own body, you actually will start breaking down your body because of the process of that exhaust from cell metabolism. So it's one of the theories behind why humans age and why our age that we're going to live is actually limited, is the fact that our metabolism eventually breaks down and causes more of these toxins. So antioxidants in our diet through vegetables and fruit are very important.
Jeff, seasonal affective disorder affects a lot of us. I double up on my vitamin C intake at the beginning of winter. In this past week, this is the first time we've seen the sun shine, I think, for the new year. What can we do, and is it something we can do in our diet that can help us combat seasonal affective disorder?
Well, one of the seasonal affective disorder is often related to the amount of sun that we get. The melatonin is also stimulated and is associated with that we can. Sun is one of the things that we need. We've evolved with sun, but there are some dietary things that may help seasonal affective disorder, including, as I said earlier, antioxidants. One of the things we've not talked about for brain food, if you will, that is very good for the brain is fish oil, omega-3 fatty acids, which we've written. Dr. Maroon and I, who's the co-host of Living Well with myself, have written many books on fish oil and the benefits for brain health, and the idea that omega-3s are actually the structure that makes up our brain cells, and humans in America primarily are deficient in it. 95% of Americans are deficient in omega-3. So omega-3 can certainly help the brain. And also building your neurotransmitters through sleep. We don't sleep enough. We have to sleep, whatever that recommended amount is for you is different than me, but we have to sleep enough to rebuild our brain and clear the waste products. And if we don't do that, our neurotransmitters suffer, and it can lead to certain depressive symptoms, including seasonal affective disorder. And
Jeff, just have about a minute left. I didn't want to leave without talking about a guy who not only talks the talk but walks the walk. He's your co-host and colleague, Dr. Joseph Maroon. You just mentioned him, and he's still going strong at 82.
He is. He just had a nice shout-out in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette this past week regarding his continued lifestyle of exercise and healthy diets. He's been running triathlons still in his 80s, and he continues to win. He's not going to tell you how many people are in his age group, but he maintains a very active exercise schedule as well as a very active work schedule. He discussed in his article about hyperbaric oxygen, how he went through a series of 3 months of treatment with hyperbaric oxygen, and it has improved his physical and mental status, and he recommends that now for prevention or helping to treat PTSD and other brain disorders. And it was a very flattering article, and many others within the Pittsburgh area were featured on cardiac health and nutrition and so on. So it was a very good article. I'd recommend people read it.
Jeff Bost, neurosurgical certified physician assistant, our guest on the Best of Beaver County. Thank you, Jeff, for helping us get started with our New Year's resolutions in 2023. We'll talk again, I'm sure.
Take care, Mike.
All right. This is the Best of Beaver County radio show on the St. Barnabas Radio Network. We'll talk to you again next week. I'm Mike Romigh. Stay healthy.
When you think about retirement, what images come to mind? Why not let yourself imagine enjoying an exceptional retirement lifestyle at the Village at St. Barnabas in Gibsonia? Attainable luxury can become yours because the Village has no large upfront fees and it's based on a simple annual no-risk contract. The only decision to make is when to move in. Call 724-443-0700 or click stbarnabashealthsystem.com.
Thank you for listening to the Best of Beaver County. St. Barnabas is pleased to have provided content and sponsorship for the program. Tune in this Sunday at 11:30 for an encore presentation of today's program on Beaver County Radio. And next Thursday at 11 for another edition of the Best of Beaver County on WBVP, WMBA, and 99.3 FM.